Did you know that the dual flash toilet system that we are so used to today and take for granted was in fact a game changer back in the 1960s when we look at sustainable innovation? It was created to reduce water consumption at home. The next time that you take a seat in one of your special rooms, do think about all of the other innovation that surround us. As a business founder and someone working with startups, there's always this idea and this pressure of coming up with new and innovative ideas. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other business leaders, other startup teams that are watching this today and are asking themselves the same question. Luckily for you today, we have the guru of innovation, James Holcock from Navigate. James helps business founders and executives unlock the true potential of the creativity of their people. And how does he do that? Well, James helps them organize, prioritize, and action the most valuable ideas that are worth innovating. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Business live show. I'm Nelly Makangu from Athena Leaders, an organization that is passionate about helping startups bring their new ideas into reality, whilst at the same time leaving behind a legacy of a happy and a productive workplace playground. Before we bring James on and really start jumping into innovation, a reminder of our three main rules. Rule number one, this is not a monologue. We love interacting with you. If you'd like to ask any questions, comments, share some tips and tools, do please use the chat function. If you're online, hashtag Athena Leaders. Rule number two, well, we really want to grow this community and we have a lot of startups watching us. If you know any startup out there that have a great story to tell, or if you are in the ecosystem and really want to help startups grow their business, do get in touch with me. January 2022 is going to be awesome. It's already fully packed. You don't want to miss the first quarter. So please do get in touch so that we can start scheduling you on from February onwards. Rule number three, most importantly, sit back, enjoy, and have a great time with us. James, welcome to the Mary Poppins of Business live show. I've been really looking forward to having this conversation with you. For someone who grew up and work in technology, innovation is always a term that's been branded around. So I really want to spend the time today to really dive deep with you. As I was telling you before, I kind of spent some time researching you. And one thing I found out is that whenever you interview people on your podcast, you always ask them, what does innovation mean to you? So let's start by you answering that question.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for having me, Naily. It's a pleasure to be on with you talking about innovation today. So yeah, and like you say, innovation it's a bit of a buzzword, isn't it? That's banded around. And yeah, so innovation to me is, in a business context, is taking an idea that's novel to you and turning it into something of value to a business, to a user or a customer. So that's like the short answer, which because I've interviewed a lot of people, well, 8 people now about that, and I think my thinking on it has changed over that time as well. But I think that's the most succinct and simple answer that I can give you about what innovation is.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's a great start. And we are going to dive into more details to see how do we turn ideas to something that add value to the business. But before we start, we go into there's always, whenever we talk about innovation and coming up with ideas, a lot of people worry that it's a space that is only reserved to entrepreneurship, right? They cannot put everything together, innovation and entrepreneurship. And how do you feel about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there a correlation or not?
That's an interesting one. So some of the people I interviewed for my podcast were, I would say, are kind of like entrepreneur brains, and they think in a slightly different way to the average person. I was going to say normal, but that's not. So yeah, so they and they kind of see ideas and then know how to action them or try and action them, and they'll always be thinking about that stuff. I think you don't have to be an entrepreneur to come up with ideas. And in fact, I find that most people, I don't think ideas are a problem. People have ideas, and it's just getting to the bottom of which are the best ideas to try, and then trying them out and seeing how it goes. From an entrepreneur point of view, from a normal business point of view. So if you take a normal, SME that maybe there's 50 employees, or even if you take it to a large corporation that's got thousands of employees, you generally speaking, and this is an opinion, but generally speaking, the people at the tops of those organizations are probably no longer as entrepreneurial as they used to be, because they're running a business day to day and they're focused on the operational business as usual. And then you've got the people within the business who are working at the coalface, talking to clients, understanding the problems, solving problems. Again, that's a lot of that is business as usual. But these people that are at the coalface, I think, really understand the problems that customers are having, and they're the people who are. There's this word, intrapreneur. So the people within the business that have got a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset. So I don't think you don't have to be an entrepreneur to come up with a good idea. I think you need, and I think the better ideas are when you get a collective group of people, a diverse range of people, from various different backgrounds, cultures, etc. That's when you come up with the really good inspirational ideas, notwithstanding like your outliers like Steve Jobs and like your big disruptive innovators like that. But yeah, so that's my thinking on it.
It's because I was on mute there. You think that with a year of doing this, I'll find out. Yes. So it's interesting that you mentioned Steve Jobs, and as he's one of the people that always get mentioned when we talk about innovations. At the same time, as you've said, innovation is really about bringing the people, especially those who speak to customers and who speak to users, as they will find the problems to tackle. Now, do you think that whenever we, glamorize this idea of innovation, and do we kind of forget the collective part of bringing the people and the team on the journey to innovation? Of course, the leadership team do come up with the strategy, but as you've said, it's really about how do we get the people together to create this space of creativity?
Do we forget the collectivity or the
Yes.
Do we forget it? I think generally, so innovation in organizations doesn't happen by accident. So on the most part, so in those organizations, yes, I think we do forget. I think people are focused on the day-to-day, so they're focused on the BAU. They've got people are putting out fires, people are they're dealing with the day-to-day, keeping the business afloat, or the organization working on the day-to-day. So in that respect, yes, I think it is forgotten. But if you look at innovative companies, then no, it's not. So if you're an innovative company with an innovative culture, then you in that culture will be about the people and about generating ideas, collecting ideas, working, picking those ideas, and that involves teams of people. And I mentioned before the culture and having a diverse range of people. You need a collective group in order to be diverse, or you're not diverse. You're a single individual. So I think people spark off each other as well. So so I do workshops where we'll brainstorm ideas, and those ideas will be far better if there's other people involved to spark off ideas. So one idea leads to another, and one of the rules when you're doing these workshops is that's at the end of the workshop, whatever's come out of it is everyone's put input into that. If just because someone came up with the last idea that was the good idea, that's sparked, but that's a chain reaction from other people's thought process. So, you know, but to answer your question, I think it is often forgotten, but I think it's often forgotten as an innovation as a whole. Innovation is sometimes forgotten within an organization. So you need to do it but deliberately, essentially. In which case it wouldn't be forgotten. It wouldn't be forgotten. You do it and you put the culture in place and the leadership and the management.
Yes. And I love what you said about the culture. So we're going to come back to that in a bit, because the one point I wanted to touch on of what you've also mentioned is how when you do the workshop with the teams to bring them together and start looking at ideas, is that the starting point of your engagement with clients or with people who want to start innovating? So, for example, if I come to you today and I said, oh, do you know what? You know, we've gone a hybrid and digital transformation is ongoing in my business, but I want to really start thinking about the next idea for the next 2 years for my business. What is the starting point? Is it about defining the problem? Is it about coming up with ideas, getting people together? So how do we kind of get going?
So that then depends on the business that you're working with. So a forward-thinking business that's already, like you said, they're already in this change process and they're doing some digital change already, for example. They might have things in place already which you could piggyback on. The first port of call, though, let's just say it's a blank canvas. The first port of call would be let's work out what is innovation to that business, because you don't want to just I don't want to go in there with a sledgehammer and put my own opinion of what innovation is. It needs to be right for that business. It needs to fit in with their culture, their culture, their leadership style, all of that kind of stuff. That's at a really high level. And if it's a large business, or even I suppose even a small business, it's not easy to change those things. So it's a consultative approach to that. That said, you can do stuff that's a little bit quicker, perhaps to get the ball rolling, perhaps try some stuff out. So for example, you could say, let's take a problem that you've got and let's run some innovation sessions around that problem to try and solve that problem. And that might be a design sprint, which is just to explain, it's a 4 or 5 day process that you go through where you take a problem, you understand, you empathize what the problem is with potential end users, and then at the end of that you've got a prototype which you can test, and then you take it from there. You test it, you see what the feedback is, and then make some decisions. It's a very quick way to test ideas. You might do that as a starting point. So it all depends on who it is that you're working with. The smaller the company, you would think the easier it would be to implement the innovation. But then, because innovation to me it's a cultural thing, it's a leadership thing, it's having a deliberate strategy to innovate. So that takes time to embed.
So you mentioned design sprint. I wanted to kind of go back to that. And one of the phrases that you've used that really stand out was empathizing with the users as part of the design sprint. I'm sure that there's a lot of people watching this who might have heard about design sprint. It's being branded quite a lot, but they might not really know what it is, how they can use that, and more specifically, what that empathizing with user means. Do you want to go into a bit more details about what is design sprint and why should people consider it?
Yeah, so so I suppose design sprints is it's come from it's born out of Google Ventures. So there's a book called Design Sprint by Jake Knapp from Google Ventures, and he worked out whilst he was at Google how to best test ideas that fit the user's need, and that follows a mindset of design thinking. So design thinking is like a bit of a mindset where you empathize with the end user. It's normally a technical problem that you would solve with it, or that's where it's come from. Although it doesn't have to be that. You empathize with the end user and to understand what are their pain points, what are their pain points, how do they operate, what things are happening for that user, and you really get to understand how they work. And outside of design sprints, you could do that by talking to people, observing people, doing surveys, etc. You can you need to fully kind of embrace yourself. Some people might go quite radical with that and go and learn how to be that user potentially. And then you go and you take that information and you define what the problem is. You then take that problem and ideate. So you find ideas. How do you solve that problem? And then you then prototype that problem and then test it. And it's supposed to be, from a design thinking point of view, it's supposed to be quick, iterative. So you prototype it, you test it, and then you go back to the start and go again. Or you might jump back to the define part or to the prototype part from the test. And you just keep iterating through that. So design sprints follows that mindset, but it's a framework for that mindset. So design sprints generally run ideally from Monday to Friday, if you follow the original version that's in the book. And Monday, you essentially define the problem, do user interviews or expert interviews, I call it. You run through that, and there's various different steps, different tools, different techniques that you use to get information out of people. You find what you want to do, and then during the week, you define what that problem is collectively as a group. And one of the techniques that they use in the design sprint is, that they use in design sprints, is that you're thinking alone together. So the idea is that you come up with your best ideas when you're actually thinking on your own. So you're in your car driving home, and you think of your best idea. So you kind of like sit down almost in silence. It sounds quite awkward, but it's not. Almost silence, coming up with your ideas, and you do that. You then share your ideas, and you do voting. So it's not, you don't want to be, you vote on the best ideas with the group. So you get consensus. You lose that hierarchy. So if there's people in there that are kind of like leaders within the business that might have a louder voice normally, then that's taken away. So they don't have to, everyone's got an equal voice.
It's actually quite interesting that they use that process, and I just jumped in here as well to kind of remind anybody and watching it in terms of thinking about brainstorming as a team in general when it comes to coming up with new ideas or even product features. Because what I love about what you said is the awkwardness of being in a room but everybody being silent to be able to think. Although it's awkward, when we start looking at personality types and profiling and how do people think and come up with their best self, their best ideas, some people prefer to talk it out, but some people do appreciate those moments of silence, which means that when the conversation starts, they have the ideas, and those who want to start talking about it also have the same playing field. So I really love I just wanted to kind of remind the listeners as well, those who are thinking of using some aspects of design thinking in terms of the company on how productive this could be, not just for innovation, but even changing how you are building your product roadmap and features or whatever you are creating for your company.
Absolutely. And that springs to mind. So there's other bits other tools you can use which involve drawing. You kind of like, you draw your ideas, and then there are other methods of or games you can play, if you will, that allow you to draw ideas out and think differently. So drawing is one of them, or you can act things out. Now, those things take people well out of their comfort zones. But and also and the drawing thing, I'm like, I've never realized this, but I don't mind drawing in front of people. You know, I'm not a very good drawer. You know, I'm not an artist, but I can draw enough that I can get the idea across, and that's all you need to do. And you can teach someone that in like 10 minutes. Like, it's all about stick people and and boxes moving from one place to another. You know, that very simple. So yeah, it's just a different way of thinking, and it takes you out. It's fun. Some people might not think so, but it is fun, and it really opens up different parts of your brain, gets people thinking in a different way, which is what you need when you're innovating. You can't just go down the same linear kind of discussion meeting and then come out with innovative ideas. Generally speaking, it's not gonna work. So yeah, that's just another thing in there.
And what is your favorite or your go-to game when you walk into the room and people feel a bit cold? They obviously they know that we need to think differently, but again, it's kind of a bit of a culture shift or a personality shift. So what are some of the games that you come up with to get people just flowing in their minds and just kind of help them navigate this innovation spectrum or the design sprint workshop?
So the game that comes straight to mind that because it's quite straightforward and simple and easy to remember is the pre-mortem. So that's where you envisage the project or your business or something ceasing to exist, so it's failed in some way. So then you can describe that. You can sort of think about what things made that happen, which kind of like makes you think about hypothetically the business has failed or the project's failed. Why has it failed? You can then you can then drill down into what things will come out of that, like risks might get raised, and you can address those risks, and ideas might come up. And I think that shock, it's not a shock, but it can be a shock, to go, your business might fail. Let's talk about how, what's gone wrong. And I think that makes people think a little bit differently, and it's an easy one to remember and grasp. And I think it's probably in the back of business leaders' minds anyway, because you're always thinking about how do we keep this going. That's an easy one. I like this Crazy Eights, which is one of the ones that's like in the design sprint book, where you draw 8 pictures, and each picture is a solution to that problem, to the problem that you're trying to solve. And you do that alone. You sit down there, and there might be 8 of you around the table, and you draw in the solution, and then you present those to the rest of the team, and I'll show them to the rest of the team. And I think that's a really interesting and quick. It's quick as well, so you only have a minute per thing. It's one piece of paper, you fold it up, which is good. It's good. It's an interesting process.
Yeah, I love them, especially the drawing one is something that I haven't really tried before. So I'm going to give that a go next time I'm running a workshop or working with my startup clients on coming up with what to do next in terms of features. And in fact, one thing I wanted to also put out to the audience, if there's anyone out there who have used different games or methods to help brainstorm and kind of create this atmosphere where ideas can grow, please do share that in the comments. And if you have any questions, especially if you're working with team and you struggle to get them to open up and generate ideas, put them in the chat. We have James with us. I'm sure he'll be able to give you more tips, and you can find us online on #AthenaLeaders. We'll forward him James the questions as well. Now, when we, as you're explaining design sprinting, of course, we looked at the empathy and understanding the users. We looked at generating ideas and how can teams generate ideas. For anyone joining us right now and you're wondering what the hell is that, then please do start watching from the beginning, because there are so many great tips that James has shared with us so far. One of the things that I picked up as well was when you talked about the speeds at which you really need to come up with ideas, create some kind of prototypes and test the prototypes and repeat. Now, when we're talking about moving in terms of creating a prototype and start talking about that to users, there's a lot of people that get anxious when it comes to making mistakes or showing work that is not completely finished. How do you work with teams and leadership teams to help them be comfortable with this idea of baking something that they know is not completely finished, but is required to be able to iterate quickly as part of the innovation process?
That's an interesting one. So I've experienced in the past. So my background is software engineering, and a project that I was involved in the past. It's probably happened more than once. You get you focus on doing something called a minimum viable product. Now, I think in the past I've been on projects where minimum viable product's been like this. It's not been understood what that is. So minimum viable product is the minimum thing that you can do in order to get that out the door, and then you test and learn from that when it's in the wild. And I think that has been positioned incorrectly. So then minimum with the leaders within a business, and then minimum viable product then becomes a bit of a dirty phrase that people don't want to hear, and they don't want to try that. So I think this is around communication and being very clear on what these things are. There's no like silver bullet for releasing a new product that's going to be awesome. You're not going to do it straight away. You need to be on board with or happy that some things won't work. I don't want to use I do want to use the word failure. Some people don't like the word failure because it's quite final. But you need to be happy that some stuff's going to go wrong. You need to learn from that and iterate. So I think it's about communicating what those things actually are. Like if you were talking to the executive team of a large company, they are probably not aligned to some of these concepts. So it's about communicating those concepts to them and getting buy-in. You don't want to be kind of like dressing it up as anything other than it is a minimum viable product. So explain, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to have to learn from this. We're going to have to iterate. Ideal world, you need to, some mistakes will be made in there, and that's good because we want to fail and learn and adapt, because we don't know the answers to these questions. Like I said, it's like empathizing with the user.
Yeah.
In software, it's really difficult to know what people want, or everything that people want up front. And also, but then you've got to sell the benefits. So the benefits of iterating is that you don't build stuff that's not needed. So you might build a little piece of something, put it out there, see what people want from that, and it'll take your product in a whole different a different direction, because you'll see things that you didn't think of, because the users know best at the end of the day. So it's communication, being upfront, making people aware of the benefits of doing it. Over communicate on those things with those kinds of people within the business.
So I agree. It's really about setting the right expectations for the business as a whole, pretty much with all of the stakeholders. And I would like to stress again what you said about also sharing the benefits of why we should fail or make a mistake. and is a huge part of the culture of innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think failure. So one thing that's this is that, you know, when you're talking to people about innovation, people people love the word innovation, and they're like, yeah, let's go and innovate. And you see it in job descriptions, like, oh yeah, come and work for innovative company once, this, that, and the other. And if you look at it, they're not actually that innovative. They're just a company that's doing some stuff. But they're not innovative in terms of, you know, my opinion of innovation. They might be innovative in their opinion of innovation. And this whole thing about failure, I think in our culture, especially in the Western culture, it's failure is kind of like drilled out of you as a kid. So you can't, when you're in the school system, you're not allowed to fail. You're not allowed to, you've got to pass your exams. You're not allowed to, you know, fail. And even if you do, if you don't win at sports day, you still get a prize and all those kinds of things. So then how do you learn? How do you learn how to learn effectively, or learn how to fail as a business? But that's not to say you should still shouldn't be going out there going, oh, it's all right if we fail as a business. That's what I'm saying. You need to have a, you know, a portfolio of ideas that you want to work on. Just like any investment that you might make. You know, some of your investments, financial investments, won't work, but others will, and the ones that will more than cover the cost of other ones not working. So you just need to spread your bets a little bit on that, and be ready for it. And then that comes to culture. How do you drive? You know, you need failure within the culture. You need people within the business to be able to go, actually, this has not worked. So what we're going to learn from that, how we're going to move on. And they should be able to bring that to people and say, yeah, it's not worked. We've got to expect it. We've got to expect that some stuff won't work.
Yeah. And I guess as part of innovation, as you've mentioned before, it's all about being able to really test quickly and find out the results. And perfectionism could be a problem along that road. In fact, yesterday I was mentoring a startup, and he's already created an amazing product. And what he worried about is that at least the front end, the website, is not 100% perfect. And my feedback was, well, whatever you think is perfect for you actually might not even be perfect for the user, because you built it based on what you think is best. The quicker you put it in the hands of your user, they might even say, oh, by the way, why did you have that feature there? Maybe you should have gone in this place. What is missing and what is not missing? So that's why it's really important to be able to kind of get things out there and start talking to people. But when we talk about that, this idea of putting things out there, most people worried about how do we find the user, right? Because you did mention empathizing with the users. How do we go out there and start knocking on doors? Do you think that people actually will just be able to or want to join in the conversation with you to help you innovate, or there are some tricks that you use to kind of get them in?
So in terms of finding users, so if you've already got an existing business and you're looking at taking that business and maybe adding a new product line, then you can talk to your existing customers. That's the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, you need to get out there and work with your networks. You might talk to people. So, for example, Elevate, which is my wife's company, they're a business development organization, massive network of people. So tap into those kind of resources and your networks. You know, find people. So something that I'm doing now for my business, because it's new, is talking to people. So talking to loads of people, and everyone was happy to grab a coffee. That's from a business point of view. Obviously, if you want to like processize that and get like people in, I think if someone came to me and said, we've got a product that's for X, Y, and Z that was something interesting to me, do you mind having do you mind if we interview you about it, or do you mind if you try using it? Then I'd jump at the chance to help. So I don't think it's hard to find people to do that. In the design sprint, when you do your testing, so you user testing, so you've built a prototype, which in some cases is quite high fidelity. So which means that you'll have it looks almost real in some cases, or it can do. Especially if it's a technical, if it's a website or a web product or something like that, there are tools out there that make it look almost real. You then get 5 people, and 5's kind of the magic number. So you only need 5 clients to test that out. And from those 5 people, you can get a load of information. So you sit there and you watch them use the products, and get insights from that. So you spend, best part of a day doing that, you get a lot of information, a lot of insights, and it gives you some really good ideas how to take it to the next stage. You don't need a load of people to do it from a design sprint point of view, and from a product point of view. You don't need hundreds of people to tell you. Keep it simple, keep it fast. It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be the next stage.
Yes.
It needs to be incremental.
And 5 is the magic number. So anyone who is worried, especially if they're just starting their companies or it's their first rodeo, remember, you don't need to have a lot of users to start. Start with 5, then find the next 5. So it's a good way to start. And the second thing I wanted to highlight, James, when you were talking about prototyping and MVPs and creating high fidelity products, for those who might think, oh, I'm a tech founder, but I don't have a tech background. What those not sure what those words means, check out my website, and we did previous shows, and there's a blog actually out there that gives you some ideas on how you can create a prototype or test or validate your ideas. So if you look for that on my website, it will give you I've linked in some tools as well that you can use to start creating the high fidelity prototypes that James was mentioning. Now, again, for those who are watching live, do please put any question, any comments, if you want to cheer James on, please put it in the chat. That would be great to keep us going. You mentioned, James, that you've just starting your company, Navigate. So let's talk about that a little bit. How did you know that it was an idea worth pursuing?
That's a good question. So I did... So my background is in software engineering, and throughout my whole career, it's always been kind of at the forefront of innovation in terms of producing stuff that's at like the end of the innovation cycle, if you will. And I did some work with a coach more recently earlier this year, and kind of like worked out what I actually really wanted to get out of life generally. So something that struck me is what I want to do is create impact. Is one of the things that came out of that. And I wasn't really creating impact in my role. So I was the head of development for an organization. I was creating impact for the organization in terms of, it was doing what it needed to do. It was making money. The software was doing what it needed to do. Also, I'm hugely creative in terms of my mindset. I'm a creative person. That doesn't necessarily make me a good innovator. The innovation comes from the collective, right? And then I want to be empowered to do those things. So I want to take that kind of like knowledge from a software engineering background and management background over the last 10 years. I've had a business before as well, where I helped businesses create their own software products. And that was all kind of like innovative, coming up with new ways of doing stuff, etc. Whilst I was doing that, I was also doing a master's at the University of Manchester. And part of that master's was around innovation, and reading into it, I thought, actually, a lot of this stuff I already do. And also, at the same time, I was like, I just couldn't get enough of reading into it. So I was like, I'm pretty passionate about that. So, that's a good sign. So I thought, right, so there's definitely a need out there, because there's a lot of organizations out there that are focusing on the BAU. So they're doing whatever they need to do to stay alive, to keep the bills paid and the staff paid and all that kind of stuff. But and this is not all businesses, some of them are already innovating, and I think there's an opportunity there to work with those businesses to help them think about how do they innovate, what do they need to do to innovate, and deliberately innovate and take those steps and make them even longer term viable, or make them give them new product lines, etc. Then if you mix that all up then with what's going on in the world around the climate, and which is something that kind of like, I'm not an expert on climate, but it's something that's in the news a lot, and I've done a fair bit of reading around it, and it really worries me. And I think like I said before, impact was one of the things I wanted to do. I believe there's some impact that I can make in the world by sharing my creative brain and mindset and getting people to understand the process of innovation that will hopefully solve some of those problems and make an impact, that's beyond doing what I was doing before.
Definitely, that is such a great mission. As you've mentioned, this idea, there's a lot of business leaders out there, especially from smaller companies, who are thinking about how to reduce their carbon footprints, the targets to net zero, and how they can get as close as possible. So if anyone is watching and thinking about that, then you might want to give James a call and kind of start discussing what could happen and how you can start generating ideas along that way. And so it was kind of interesting to hear about your journey, right, from the software engineering and the product development to starting Navigate and everything in between. Now that Navigate is here, right, it's your baby, and I'm sure you're proud of it. But just like with any other babies, there are moments when you have to wake up at 3:00 in the morning to feed the child, and you actually want to sleep, right? Do you have any stories and of moments when you start your business, you feel, oh my God, what is going on?
Yeah, so this is early days for me. So I started this at the start of October. So we're talking like 6-7 weeks in. I think the biggest challenge for me is getting out there and talking to the right people that can help with that. And then, like, I've got these ideas, but what's the value? What problems am I solving? So that I'd say that constantly keeps me awake. What is the problem that I'm solving that's of value that people will pay me to do? And that's what I'm working on now. That's what my business is all about at the moment, is talking to people, understanding the pain points and the problems, and then using a bit of my own medicine, empathizing with those people, and then defining that. Luckily, I've got a lot of help because I've got access to quite a large network of people. There's a load of investment in Manchester as well for business in general, so it's quite an exciting time in that sense. So yeah, I think that it constantly keeps me up that I've not nailed that down. That what are the pain points? Because I know that the solution is right for stuff, but what are the pain points? What am I trying to solve for people? And I know that it's high value. Like you could really help, whether it be creating a new product. You could even create, if people have got a good innovation process, they can have you can have spin-offs of companies that are hugely successful. This is not a magic bullet, though. It's not going to. It takes time and effort and resource and etc. to do that. But there's something that can be done there, and then obviously the impact side of that. What you can make a big impact with that, and it's just getting to that point where people understand what that is or what that could be. Yeah,
the sweet spot of the product market fit, regardless of whether you are building a physical or virtual product or a service, is always at the forefront of so many entrepreneurs. And in fact, as I was saying yesterday in my mentoring session with a startup, we were kind of talking about the same thing. He's been running his business for about a year and a half or something like that. and he has some kind of product, and the next step is going out there and really start testing it. So don't worry, you're not alone. It's something that a lot of startup we all, or business owner, we all share. And in fact, we did talk a lot about leadership and how leadership needs to create this culture of innovation, how they should be okay to understand the process of iterating quickly, making mistakes, obviously not planning for mistakes, but making mistakes so that they can grow their products. Now, to do all of that, and from your own experience of running a business, there's a lot of questions, things that keeps you at night, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, whatever you name it. I always like to ask these questions to founders or anyone coming on my show, just to remind everybody that we're all human, we all go through that. So do you have any tips, one or two tips that helps you maintain a strong mindset on your journey to growing Navigate?
Whew, that's a tough one. Yeah, so we are all human. Tips for mindset. So I think it's about being positive. So, you know, if you feel yourself doubting what you're doing, then it's about just putting a positive spin on that and having a network of people around you that you can bounce ideas off. And also, especially if you're a founder on your own, like me. So at the moment, I'm on my own. I've got no people working with me or for me. So it's about finding those people to be able to bounce those ideas off. Because you know, your own head is a lonely place. So yeah, find those people that you can trust to talk to.
Yeah, thanks for sharing so openly. And I love what you said about your lonely your only space, or your only mental space is kind of a lonely place. And I agree completely. Reach out to other founders, solopreneurs out there, so that you can just bounce off ideas and support each other. Absolutely. What's next for you and Navigate?
So next so before Christmas, I'm working with Elevate, who are my business development people, and they're helping me get in front of the right people. So I've got a event coming up later this month, right at the back end of this month, where I'm going to share ideas about what in an effort to empathize with those people. So we're having an event this month, at the end of this month, which will then lead on to working out, you know, what sort of defining the problem, if you will, if you're going to put a bit of a design thinking approach to it. And then, yeah, it's from there, it's just, it's an iterative approach. I think in the mid term, it's about how do I make an impact? So how do I make an impact on the world? What products or services can I offer that make an impact? So in the back of my head now, like on a daily basis, it's like, where can I do this climate thing? Where can I help businesses generally innovate? And then obviously I'm a software engineer at heart. So what products are in the background? I've not talked to many people about what products are in my head, but I think there's ways to yet. But there's other ways to do what I'm doing. So I think in the next not too distant future, those ideas will start to come out.
Well, I will definitely be watching and keeping up with your progress, James, and Navigate. And I'm sure many other people watching this video will want to do the same. So how do we do that? How do we find out more about you?
So everything I do will be posted on LinkedIn. So follow me, get followed. Is it a follow on LinkedIn? It can be a follow. Connect. That's the one. Connect.
But that's actually a follow as well, right?
Yeah. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Navigatenext.co.uk is my website. That is at the moment very much a holding page, but that'll have all the detail on it. It's going to get some blogs and stuff on there as well when I get round to it. I think just keep an eye on that. More of these. I love this setup, by the way. I think it's a great way to sort of, share ideas and hopefully add value to people. So
exactly, yeah. So the way I see that is, I'm welcoming you to my virtual home, and we're just having a discussions with so many other people out there watching and also getting the benefits of that. I've got one final question, and before I ask the question, James, we will put the link to your events in the description of the show, so I will get in touch with you to get that. So for anyone who's interested and really wants to go and find out more, then yes, we will have the link for you. There's one final question. That's a tricky one, and I hope you are ready for that. But before that, again, massive thank you to anyone watching this, and to James for giving us his time to share so much value. We learned a lot about generating ideas, generating problems, ideas, and how do you prototype and test and really turn an idea to something that brings value in your life. If you're wondering, what am I talking about? Then please do go back and watch the episode again. For anyone else watching, if you enjoy this show, help us spread the word, share, subscribe, and like our videos as well. As I've mentioned before, January 2022 is already booked up. If you think that you have value to bring to the startup community, please do get in touch as soon as possible. Now, James, I hope you're ready for your tricky question or your fun question. In one word, you get one word for this. How do you describe your experience of starting up your own business?
One
word.
Crazy.
Crazy. I love that. Crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, that was James Hawcock from Navigate, joining me today on a conversation about innovation. Thank you very much for watching. See you at the next show. Remember, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.